Welcome.
No, you can't have that.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So we're getting to pushing a little further with this particular Parsha of VaYelech, and here we are. So again, this is all by way of preparation for the song or the poem that Moses is going to write, which we will be reading, I guess we'll be reading it the Shabbat following Yom Kippur. So, yes. Ki anochi yadati et meriecha, because I am aware of, I know, your rebelliousness or kasher, and your stiff neck. Hein be'odeni chai, he says, indeed, while I am still alive, right? While I was still alive, imachem hayom, with you, live with you today. Mamrim heitim im Hashem, you have acted rebelliously or with God, with Hashem. Va'af ki acharei moti, and I'm going to guess af means indeed, in this case, indeed, after my own death. So Moses is saying this to them. Just double check here. Yeah, all right. So this is the first time we're going to actually complete a parsha, it looks like, right? Hakilu
I was
Elah.
just thinking that.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, it's significant because we haven't ever completed a parsha.
Well, it is short. It is a short.
That is all true. Hakilu Elai et kol ziknei shivtechem v'shodrechem. Gather to me all the elders of your tribes and your officers. V'adavra ba'oznehem, and I shall speak in their ears et hadvarim ha'eleh, these words. Now, this little note is telling you that this particular column of the Torah starts with this vav, with the va'ida ba'am, and I will testify amongst them, right? I will serve as witness amongst them. I'll explain a little bit about the significance of that little comment. Et hashamayim, the heavens, ve'et haaretz, and the earth. In other words, I will call to witness against you the heavens and the earth. So what about this vav? So it's a very sweet tradition that if you look at most of the columns of a Sefer Torah, of a Torah scroll, you'll see that they start with the letter vav, this letter vav. The letter vav, the word vav actually means hook. And that's why the letter vav also stands for and, because the conjunction links one thing to another. It's a hook that hooks one word to another word. And it's a play on words, because a column, both a printed column and a regular column, is called an amud, can be referred to as an amud. And in fact, when we read about the construction of the tabernacle, we read about the amudim, right? The columns that they made surrounding the Mishkan, on which they hung the curtains. And we talked about there, in the context of the construction of the Mishkan, of the hooks that were on the columns on which they suspended the curtains, and they were referred to as the vavei ha'amudim, right, the hooks of the curtains. And so my thought is that the Sefer Torah also has vavei ha'amudim, also has the letter vav on these columns in the Sefer Torah. And I think the connotation is that just as the curtains surrounding the tabernacle surrounded a place of the divine presence, so the Vavei Ha'amudim of the Sefer Torah imply the presence of God in the words of the Torah. And so even though we don't have a physical Mishkan anymore, there is now another way in which the Mishkan is present with us through the Sefer Torah, through the words of the Sefer Torah. Having said all that, there are 6 columns that do, well, one of those, let me see, 6 columns that are singled out. And the truth is that when you write, there are a couple of traditions of how a Sefer Torah is written and which word actually heads the column that starts with the letter Vav. However, when it comes to this particular column, it has to start with the word Va'adabra. It has to start with that particular word. So that the Vav of that particular column makes up a phrase. So the 6 columns are Bereshit. Okay, I'd have to go back and actually see, all right, what these columns are. Okay, but there are 6 columns that start with a specific word. As I said, this bait is the bait of Bereshit. Okay, and I'm just blocking right now on the other 5 or the other 4. I'm pretty sure I'd have to look whether the hay is the hay that starts. I'm not sure. I'm thinking possibly in Haazinu, but I may be wrong. But these are 6 specific columns that start with these particular letters, and these letters spell out a phrase, B'ya Shmo, through the name of God, or with Hashem, in other words, with God. Yah, right, as you know, is another name for God, by his name. And there's actually a verse that says B'ya Shmo Tzur Olamim, that with God's name, or with God through his name, he founded or he formed worlds. And possibly this is another sort of allusion to the divine presence in the universe through the Sefer Torah. Possibly one of you can do the research. Okay.
But how does Yashmo mean God's name?
Well, Shmo means his name, right? Right?
Yes,
Name.
but that's not the right word order for Hebrew.
I know. So I'm trying to, but I'm thinking, Shem can also mean reputation. I'd have to look up the verse itself and see how they translate it. I'll try and make a note to myself to do that. But the whole phrase is B'ya Shmo Tzur Olamim, right? And the idea, perhaps with the idea of Yud and Hey, that also has understandings, right? We discussed the letter Yud, which is the smallest letter of the alphabet, and how that represents possibly the divine spirit, and how the Hey represents this world, because it's dimensional, right? It has dimension to it. And we also talk about the kots of the Yud, which means the thorn of the Yud. And I don't know if the kots refers, I'm just not remembering. My thought is possibly that the kots refers to this little part that sticks up of the Yud as well. Golda, did you find it?
Yep. The bet, which is in Bereshit, the
Right.
very first word. Then the Yud is Bereshit
Yehuda? Is it Yehuda?
49, 8.
It's Judah, right? Yehuda?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
And the Hay is in
Jacob.
Shemot,
And that is?
14:28. I don't know what that word is at this point. I'd have to look.
Okay, so that's the 10 Commandments is chapter 20. So it could be Shirat Hayam, perhaps. I don't know. It's early. It's got to be earlier than that.
Well, I can look. Oh, I can look it up really quickly. And the shin is disputed. It could be several places.
Okay, go on.
One is in Vayikra 18:8. There's a minchas shei to Mincha to Vayikra. I don't know what that means. I'm just reading this off of a.
I think it's Minchat Shai, and it's the name of a commentator that
Oh,
often,
okay.
yes, who talks
Yeah,
about
and then the mem, and
yes,
then there's a mem in Bamidbar.
okay,
I mean, I can look those up and actually give you the
right.
words.
And the Vav, of course, is here. Okay.
Right.
Could you look up also the verse that says Ki biyashmo sur olamim?
Okay, hold on, let me write that down.
And we know why the hay represents this world, right? Because it's so easy to fall out of this world. If you turn and go according, if you follow the wrong path, you can fall out of this world. But nevertheless, there's always room to crawl back in, that little space between the roof of the hay and the left leg, that you can still get back in because of tshuva. So that represents tshuva. So the hay represents this particular world. So it could, Judith, I don't know if I'm answering your question. Perhaps I could answer it better, but the idea of the divine element of creation. But please follow up if you want to follow up the question.
I mean, you know, if it's Yah and Shem, it would be Shem Adonai, not Shemo.
Yes,
Yah,
yeah,
Yah doesn't come first with an apostrophe.
right. I know.
I don't understand how Yashmo means God's name.
Yes, yeah. Well, you could put a comma after the yeah, right? It would be helpful to find the actual verse that we're referring to. But nevertheless, I'm pretty sure that it's an acrostic way in the Sefer Torah to express one element of its holiness. Let me keep going, see if we can finish up, okay? Okay. Let's see what goes on here. Here we go. Hakilu Elai, right? Gather for me, or gather to me, excuse me. Gather to me.
But I think I have the sentence that it
Oh,
came from.
thank you. Please.
I
Yeah.
think, because I don't have the Hebrew side by side, but I was clicking on links from Safaria and
Okay. Go on.
Psalm 68:5.
Yes, it is a psalm. Right. Go on.
Psalms 68, verse 5
Yes.
says, sing to God, chant hymns to his name, extol him who rides the clouds, the Lord in his name, exult in his presence.
I wonder why, because Sur Olamim, I'm pretty sure was the end of that verse.
Well, this is Safaria. Took
But
me.
that sounds like the right reference.
It looks like the hay is in where the waters turn back and cover the chariots and the horsemen.
Okay.
So I'm
Okay.
not sure the exact word, but
So it is a Shirat Hayam.
heel, maybe? No, that's a chet. Never mind.
Okay.
There's Hamayim. It could be that.
Okay.
Or Harechev.
I'd
No,
have to go
that's
back.
attached to something else.
Okay.
So, yeah. So no, it's probably Hamayim.
Could be. We'd have to double check. But thank you for doing the research for me and for us. Thank you. Let's keep going on this Rashi. Make sure we can get through it. All right. It's quite a long Rashi. Okay. Hakilu Elai, gather to me. Velo tik'u oto hayom. And on that day, remember we had read in Numbers, I believe, how Moses was told to make these trumpets to gather the people, and we were told how he was to sound them. And if it was just one kind of sound, then the elders were to arrive. If it was a different kind of sound, then everyone needed to gather, etc., etc. Okay. So he said, Velo tik'u oto hayom. And on that day, they did not sound b'chatzotzrot with the trumpets, the hakil et hakahal, to gather the crowd, gather the group. And I think it's because Moses is saying to them, rather than just simply saying that the trumpets were sounded, but he's telling them to gather together. And why? So why didn't they sound the trumpets that day? Lefi shene'emar, because it states in Numbers chapter 10, Aseh lecha, it says, make for you. Velo hishlit Yehoshua alehem, and because Moses was told to make them for himself, Joshua was not going to have the ability to use those trumpets because they were strictly for Moses. Joshua did not have any right at that. It could be at that time or period, right? Shalit means kind of the ruler, right? Had no rule over them, over these trumpets. Va'af b'chayav, and in fact, so this makes it pretty sure that Joshua wasn't going to be able to use these trumpets because it says va'af b'chayav, and even during his lifetime, that is at the end of Moses' life, nignazu, they were hidden away, kodem yom moto, before the day of his death. So Joshua, under no circumstances, was to have, because Moses was told to make them for himself, and for himself meant strictly for himself. Okay, so this is before the day of his death. Sfarim achirim, other manuscripts or other versions have beyom moto, on the day of his death. They were hidden. These trumpets were hidden. Lakayem mashin emar, and this was to fulfill what is written in Kohelet Chet, in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 8. Ve'en shilton beyom hamavet. There is no, here's the shalit shilton, right? There is no rule on the day of death. So that's a verse, of course, that could go two ways. I think the pshat is that we don't control ultimately the day of our death, right? But it also is understood to mean that on the day that you die, it's sort of like the grand lame duck situation where you no longer have any authority at all. And I think that so that's understood as why Moses no longer had the ability to use those trumpets. Va'idabam. So going on with the verse, it says, Va'idabam, I will call to witness to them, et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, the heavens and the earth. The im tomar, so this phrase usually means raising an objection, right? And should you say, Hare kvar he'id lamala, right? He says, he already called to witness above, in other words, before this particular passage. By the way, if you aren't muted, please check your mute button, okay? Up in chapter 30, Ha'idoti bachem, look at that, he says already, I call to witness against you, Hayom, etc. Hatam le Yisrael Amar. In that case, he was saying that to the Israelites. Aval Shamayim va'aretz, but he wasn't saying it to the heavens and the earth. Lo Amar. Right? He wasn't calling the heavens and the earth to testify. Even if he said, I call against you the heavens and the earth, at that point he wasn't addressing the heavens and the earth, right? V'achshav ba lomar. But now he was coming to say, Ha'azinu hashamayim, give ear, O heavens. So because he says Ha'idoti bachem hayom, right? Because he says, I call to witness against you today, right? And yet above in chapter 30, we see already appeared to be saying the same thing. So why today? And Rashi is saying those two statements occurred on two different days, and that other statement seems to be talking about the heavens and the earth again. But here he actually is he is going to address. And look here, this is a Seder Hazinu right here. Hazinu Hashamayim va'adabreya. Give ear, O heavens, and I shall speak. So that's the point. Let's go one more, please. Okay. Ki adata acharei moti, because I know after my death, ki hashchet tashchitun, you will act corruptly, v'sartem min haderech, and you will turn aside from the path, asher tziviti etchem, which regarding which I commanded you. V'karat etchem hara'ah, and the evil will find you or happen to you, right? Ba'acharit hayamim, in the end of days, meaning, as time passes. Ki ta'asu et hara'ah, for you will be acting wickedly, be'enei Hashem, in the eyes of God, lahachiso, to anger him, b'maaseh yedechem, through the works of your hands. So it's interesting, right, that this dynamic is such a strong dynamic, especially in the book of Deuteronomy, right? It is the great correction that Moses is saying, and that's in looking at the entire book, at trying to draw the people to practice tshuva, right? He's trying so hard. It's like, as I said, an insurance policy to prevent this from happening. Let's see here. Acharei moti ki hashchet tashchitun. I think, let me make sure I'm reading it correctly again. Yeah, tashchitun. Hashchet tashchitun. So, v'harei kol yamot Yehoshua, but it's so interesting, it's so beautiful how Rashi points out, but indeed, throughout the days of Joshua, lo hishchitu, they didn't act corruptly while Joshua was leading them, right? And Moses is saying, well, after I die, you're going to act corruptly. And how do we know this? In Nehemiah, it actually states in the book of Judges, Shoftim Bet, in the 2nd chapter of the book of Judges, Vayavdu ha'am et Hashem, and the people served God, kol yemei Yehoshua, throughout the days of Joshua. So this appears to be a contradiction, right, to what the Torah is saying here. Mikan, and from this we can infer. So how do we harmonize this? We can infer shetalmido shel adam, that the student of a person, chaviv alav kegufo, is as precious to him as himself, right? That a teacher's student is this teacher identifies so completely with his student, shekolzman sheYehoshua chai, that as long as Joshua was alive, haya nir'eh leMoshe, right? It appeared to Moses, ki'ilu hu chai, as if he himself was still alive. That Joshua was such a devoted student of Moses that he, in a sense, extended Moses' life, even though Moses physically had passed away. One more verse. Vaydaber Moshe bo'oznei kol kahal Yisrael. Moses spoke in the ears of the entire gathering of Israel. Et divrei hashira hazot, the words of this song or this poem, ad tumam, until they were completed. And this is a significant moment that we have completed this particular parsha. And please God, if we should be studying next year, my thought is that we could possibly then take a look at the Torah Tamima. I mean, we have a lot of choices, but we will, since we're going to be continuing with so much of the Torah with the Rashi, that this particular parsha, however, we can start looking at Torah Tamima on this particular parsha. So I'm going to stop the share and give you an opportunity then to comment, if any of you would like to. And yeah. Any thoughts, any comments before I actually stop recording?
Yeah, how did Moses know that there were going to be stiff-necked people in the future and start worshiping idols again?
Okay, so
Yeah.
so my wife's aunt, her late aunt, used to say, if you want to know the future, look at your past. Look at your past and you'll know your future. And as Moses says specifically, he says he's already experienced, look, what did they do after getting the 10 Commandments? Right? What did they do when they sent out the 12 spies? What did they do when they lacked water for a bit? What did they do when they didn't have fresh meat to eat? So it's so interesting, you might say, that there's a connection between having a complaining attitude and what that can lead you to do. Because we see the story of the Exodus as a sort of testimony to the Israelites complaining so much, whenever they had to face any adversity. And of course, even the golden calf, right? They thought Moses was gone. There was some adversity there. So how do we deal with adversity? And is it an excuse then to move off? Yeah. But he certainly had experienced it. Okay.
They when they went to go to war, I think Moses told Joshua, "Don't worry, God will be with you. He'll be in front of you." Even though the people are giants and their walls are fortified, don't worry, everything will be okay.
So remember,
that to me is great.
Harlan, remember that both Joshua and Caleb had seen what the other 10 spies had seen, and they said themselves that they felt they had the confidence. Moses did not need to reassure them. So Joshua was one of those people who had confidence that God would make God had promised them this. So clearly God would be, aid them in successfully conquering the land. But you're right, there are other places, though, where Moses reassures Joshua and tells him to be strong and of good courage. I mean, he knows. Can you imagine yourselves what it would be like for Joshua to take over the leadership of the group after Moses and having experienced that? So I'm going to stop the recording here. Please God, Sunday we will continue with Ha'azinu.